Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's John Wayne Mullins, and I am excited for today's interview with a very good friend of mine. And we're talking about a very important topic that I know a lot of people, a lot of new dads struggle with. Reese has been a good friend of mine for a number of years. We met through a mutual friend that connected us, and Reese is a fellow business coach, but he's also um, Reese Cagle is who I'm interviewing today, but he is he's got several years in the restaurant management and franchising business, and he's now a business coach working with uh, companies around the country. So he's a pretty busy guy. And so when I thought about the topic that I wanted to talk to Reese about, it was this. And it's a topic that I often hear with a lot of new dads is how do you manage your day? How do you stay engaged? How do you be present in your life, in your kid's life, in your family life? And I want to hear from him because he's a very busy guy, but he also has a 6-year-old daughter. He's got a 4-year-old son. He's got a wife. He's got a home. He's got a marriage. And so he has all these challenges. And so I'd really like to ask him about his uh, challenges and how he's come to be successful and how he's managed to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on.
Hey, John.
Hey Reese, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Wouldn't miss it. I've been watching your podcast and couldn't wait to be on it.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So like I was telling my audience a little while ago, um, you're a pretty busy guy, and you're a pretty successful guy. You're a restaurant franchise owner. You have your own business coaching uh, company. You travel around working with several different restaurants and organizations and companies. But then at the same time, you somehow have figured out how to stay present in your family life, and you've
Mm.
learned how to set those boundaries up. And I'm sure you didn't do that overnight. So I'd like to hear your story about the challenges of being a busy dad and how did you figure that out?
Yeah, I often say that I wonder where all the time went before I had kids. Before I had kids, I don't know what I did with myself. I just can't. My wife and I talk about that all the time. What do we do with ourselves? We thought life was so busy, and then you have kids, and all of a sudden it gets busier. And you think the older they get, the easier it's going to become, but that's not true either. So it has been busy from the beginning of being a new dad. That's why I really love what you do. I remember that feeling of holding your first child and looking down, thinking, wow, now I'm responsible for more than just me. And that is an overpowering feeling as a dad. But it doesn't change you in that instance. It's not right then that you change all of your habits, that you change all of your desires, that you stop becoming selfish, that you stop getting sucked into work. It doesn't change immediately. It has to be done over time. So, like you just mentioned, I didn't change overnight. I can remember being with clients every night and traveling a lot, brand new baby. I wasn't at home for dinner. I was constantly at events, and my wife was saying, is this what life looks like together?" And I said, "For right now, it does." And we had to really learn to work together. My wife Lindsay's a first grade teacher, so when she got home at night, it was just her and the baby. And so I was very much a busy person at that time. But fast forward, and that stayed for a while. So I'm sure there's a lot of new dads who are just busy because it's a profession that they chose. Early in our marriage, I was a restaurant manager, so I was gone at nights anyway. So we were kind of used to that. We just had thought it would slow down at that point once we started having kids. It takes a little while for you to get into a groove as a dad. That's something that I learned. It just takes a little while for you to change your habits. But I remember when my son was born, so I had a baby son and a toddler daughter, and my daughter's name is McKenna, and my son is named Rhett. And I was just sitting there playing with them, and I was there in body on their floor. We were all sitting there playing, but my mind was totally somewhere else. I was thinking about somebody who had called earlier that morning. I was thinking about something that needed to be done at the office. I was thinking about a few people that I needed to follow up with. And I just remember thinking, I can't be a great dad if I'm not here with them. at all times. So I went on a journey to figure out what are a few things that I could do to make sure that I was present in the moment. And I started unpacking a lot of different habits and different things I have today that make me a more present dad, even traveling around the country, even just this month alone. I have multiple engagements all around the United States, but I make an effort these days to when I'm there, I'm there. And when I'm working, I'm engaged. So I'm not working when I'm not working. Just something I had to learn over time.
I really like that. And probably about 2 weeks ago, I'm ashamed to say this, but you'll appreciate it. I realized how much addicted I was to my phone.
Mm,
I would come home. I work out of my office, and so I feel like that's it. I feel like I always had to connect, or I always had to respond, or I always had to check whatever service I was using. And finally, my wife Christina, she was like, "Listen, no more of that at the table. No more of that when you're around him. If you're going to be in the living room with him, you're going to be in the living room with him, but you're not going to be on your phone because he's paying attention to that, and you're not."
oh, yeah.
Oh man, it stung. And so the last 2 weeks, I've I've caught myself. I didn't realize how addicted I was to my phone and how it was keeping me. It was distracting me.
Hmm.
Yeah, I didn't like that. So
Yep.
I'm trying to change it.
Well, and it's two traps we get in. I speak of a number of different traps when I'm talking to new dads, but two traps we often get stuck in, and what you're talking about is the distraction trap. This phone makes it awful because somebody can always get a hold of you, and sometimes, and most dads may or may not realize this, but babies can be boring sometimes, right? They're cute for a moment, and then you're like, I have a baby here. What do I do? And all of a sudden you navigate to your phone because we're constantly craving that in the way we live today, and some mindless Facebook and then a little bit of text. But those habits we're going to keep with us long term. And just because your child is a baby at the moment, if you keep those habits in place, then they start noticing the world around them and they see that your attention is going here rather than your attention is going to them. So the distraction trap has a lot of long-term consequences if we're not careful. The second trap is the comparison trap. And that is like, I'm at home, I'm sitting with these kids, and somebody out there is beating me. They're working harder. They're at the office right now. And you notice this because you're scrolling through their Facebook page, right? They're holding some award, smiling, and you're holding your baby going, okay, I need to get out there and do something. But the truth is, how do you measure success? You got to come up with that definition really early. Is that trophy how you measure success? Or is raising that child the right way and leaving a legacy how you measure success? So I think that comparison trap is dangerous in our society today with
Oh,
social
it
media
is.
and how connected we are. So if you just keep your what you said earlier, awareness, keep awareness on when you're falling in the comparison trap and keep awareness of when you're falling in the distraction trap. And that makes all the difference. Awareness truly makes a difference because that's when you can start making really good changes.
I really appreciate you saying that because um, being a business owner, being a full time dad, it's easy to get sucked into um, that facade that, oh my gosh, so and so is doing this, and so they're so engaging, and you start comparing yourself to them, and they have kids. What are they figured out that I haven't, or what are they doing that I'm not? And then you have a conversation with them, and they're like, I'm struggling just like you. So
Hmm.
it's a big lie. It's a trap that we can easily fall into. So I'm really glad and really appreciate you saying that because it's an easy trap to fall into. And sometimes you don't even realize you're in it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we often, I heard this very early on, and I'm sure people have made memes about it a lot, but it's we compare our chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
So there's all these different Instagram posts about that, but it's so true. I remember sitting down with a guy who was literally winning award after award in sales contests. This was years ago, and I remember saying, "Man, I want to be like you." And he said, "Reese, my kids are grown up and out of the house." He said, "I've invested years into getting great at what I'm doing. you've got a little baby at home and a wife, and you're here for, this event for the weekend. You're going to get fired up, but you got a family to go back and take care of. And he told me, don't forget what's important. Don't compare your chapter 2 to my chapter 20.
Mm,
And sometimes we have this even playing field with everybody. We think we're all playing together, much like what you just said. In another way, you see somebody and they're having all the success. You're like, they have kids at home too. But then you find out later, they're not really involved in their kids' lives.
hmm
They barely know their kids' birth dates or their kids' names, right? They don't go to any of the games. They are so addicted to the strive of success that is what is important to them. So don't let their values and priorities become your values and priorities. I think it's the key is getting clear on what is important to you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's another great teaching topic, and I'm so glad you're saying it because when you know about your values, and even just, hey, what are you trying to do? What do you want as a dad, or what kind of child are you trying to raise? If you don't
Hmm.
know the answer to that, you're going to be all over the place. But when you decide to put your kids as a priority, that's where your focus goes. And that's a
That's
great
right.
top. That's a great way. Some people don't do that, and I would say a lot of dads don't do that because look at the society we live in currently. I think one in
Hmm.
four homes don't have a present dad, and so you know that you can see the result of that.
Hmm.
But I think the
That's right.
people, like you said, who know their priorities, know their values, they put their child first because that's what they're trying to do. So, man, this is good. This is really good. I really appreciate this. This is so. You know, now that you're in the position you've been a dad for 6 years now. What are some of the ways that you kind of keep yourself accountable or aware of? Am I falling in that trap? Or how do you keep yourself in check?
Well, you said boundaries earlier. There's two things I'm thinking about when you say that. Number one is how I treat their mom. That's number one. Keeping those boundaries in check because my kids see way more than I think they see. They're attuned to way more. Their behavior is driven by what they see me do. You always go into a big organization and you meet the executive team and you realize, like, do these guys have a clue what's going on inside of this organization? And when you dive deeper, you find out that the executive team is saying, do what I say, not as I do. Well, households are being ran like that today too, right? Where the parents are saying, no, 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 no. I can be mean to your mother, but you must be nice to your mother, right? The kids are going to do what you do. So number one for me is the interaction that I have with their mom is very key because if they don't respect my actions and how I treat me, I can't make them respect me other than just a title of their dad, right?
Right.
So I want to lead with my actions, how I love them and how I love their mom. But the second part of what I thought of when you said that is just some things that I put into my habits every week that help me be present there. Because I want to be listening to the constant changing things that are going on in their life. And again, I have a one who is in preschool, last year of preschool, and then I have one who is in first grade. So I'm not super far down the road with teenagers. I know there are people who probably watch your channel who have teenagers, and I haven't even entered into that world yet. But there's certain things that I'm doing now that I still plan on doing when they're teenagers. One of those things is a mind dump every week. Every week, I get out of my office, I go to a coffee shop, I sit down, I spend about 45 minutes to an hour, and I write down everything personally and professionally that I need to achieve that's on my mind. And I put it all down in my notebook. And then I start to prioritize. And I use the Eisenhower matrix. You're probably super familiar with that. I use the 4 Ds of the Eisenhower matrix. What do I need to do? What does Reese need to do? Then I look at what can I defer? What can I do later on? Then I look at what do I need to delegate? Who can I get to do it? Whether somebody in the office or maybe that's between Lindsay and I. Like what could she do that I don't have to do this week, but maybe she's even better at it than me. And then what can I delete? What doesn't need to be on my calendar, my agenda, my schedule? And so I look at those 4 Ds and I start to really prioritize what I need to get done. This has been the biggest help, other than my actions, other than changing, other than making being aware or being focused on the way that I treat them and their mom. The way that I treat my workload is huge in this, because if I have that list tight and I have it color coded and I know what I have to do and I know what's coming up later on the horizon, I know who I asked to do something, I know what's not on there anymore. This makes it easy for me to be present. It makes it easy for me to sit at the dinner table and say, "Hey, how was soccer?" and actually be listening, not say, "Oh, how was soccer?" and then I'm thinking about something totally different. I'm thinking about, did that dry cleaning get picked up? I'm not thinking about that during that time, because that was done in the mind dump for the week. And I used to do it every single Thursday. With the way my schedule's changed here lately, I switch it up to when I do it. But every week I fight to get that hour in, to get everything out of my head, to categorize, organize, and make sure that I'm present when I'm with the kids. So I would say watch your actions and then take action in your daily habits and activities to make sure you can be present with them.
Wow, I love that, Reese. The 4 Ds, the Eisenhower theory. I really admire that, and it's really um, what I'm hearing is you created a process because you know
Mhm.
yourself that well that if you don't do this, it keeps you from being able to be present. So this process that he was saying, what do I need to do? What do I need to defer? What can I delegate? What can I delete? This is simple to do. And if you don't know what a mind dump is, go to YouTube. It's an you take a journal and like you said, you just write out everything that's on your mind. It You're dumping your mind. You get everything out there and you realize, hey, what can I delegate? What needs to be done now? What can be put off in the on the back burner? That helps you to be successful. That helps you to be present. I love that tool, Reese. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and I'll give a little plug for, I don't get compensated by it, but I think it's one of the best things that I've found. James Clear, he wrote the book Atomic Habits. He has a notebook. It's called the James Clear Notebook. I have the small one. A couple of business owners that I coach have the larger one.
Hmm.
But the small one is what I keep in my bag. And it is a planner, but it's not a planner. But if you flip to the back, it has the Eisenhower matrix. It has different ways you can schedule your day to be productive and to maximize your week. But if you keep your everything that's going on between your ears in that journal, it's not a planner because it doesn't have the days of the month in it. It's a
Right.
planner because it has little teeny dots all over it, and you can organize your thoughts in all of the notebook pages. And that is what I do. That's where my mind dump goes. That's where it's color coded. I have a little to do list every day, but he's got some planning templates back there that really changed the way that I plan on a weekly basis. And it's like $30 on Amazon. It was some of the best $30 I've ever spent in the last couple of years.
Sure. Now, how do you share that with your wife, or how do you pull her into some of that?
No, I don't share that with my wife. I did early on, and that was a mistake because my wife's like, "All right, listen, I got too much to worry about as an educator than needing to worry about your
Good
mind dump
point.
as well,"
Good
right? When
point.
she's looking at all the colors inside of my notebook. So how I share that with her is we talk every night. We have, and my business partner, one of my coaching businesses, him and his wife. That's a New Year's resolution for them, is a couch chat where they sit on the couch and talk. Too many couples don't talk today. And so that inspired me to say, okay, we do talk every night, my wife and I, but let's be more intentional about it. And so
Mm.
we have started that. He inspired me to start that too. And we just block a little time off at the end of the night, right after we tuck the kids in, and we spend 10 or 15 minutes. And that's if I have something to delegate. And listen, my wife is amazing at delegating stuff to me. All right. So she'll be like, Reese, I need you to boom, 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 boom. That's my opportunity to say, I can or can't do this. And we really synergize our next day based on that 15 minutes we spend after the kids go to sleep.
Oh wow, wow. So
But
there
it's just about
that
being intentional with time.
yeah. Well, and you could see the result of being that intentional is you are ensuring that communication is flowing, because
Hmm.
otherwise I think, and it's especially for new dads, you're in this season where you're still trying to figure it all out. You have your different priorities, you have everything, you're sleep deprived, but by taking those 5 minutes every day, or even just doing it every other day, finding that time to
Hmm.
really just sit down with your wife and like connect and talk and see how you're doing, and that way you can have a board. Since since Evan's been born, I have a similar scrum board in my office. Now we have another board in our kitchen of all things that need to get done so we can stay on top of them. Because we used to have one in our kitchen, but it was like on the side of the refrigerator where you didn't see it, so it was out of sight, out of mind. Now it's right in our dining room because we put things on there that we need to communicate. We're like, oh yeah, we need to get that done. So it's just another great tool that you can use a part of your process to keep that communication flowing. I'm gonna write
Yeah,
that
let me say
down.
2 points about that. Number 1 is every kitchen should have a calendar in it. Every kitchen, especially if you're a dad who has a lot of demands on him at work, because so many times you can forget big events. And moms, they have a superpower; they don't forget big events. But dads, we tend it's
Yeah.
like our kryptonite. Sometimes we're like, wait, that's tonight. So having a calendar in the kitchen is key, and make sure it's a place where you can see. So that would be the first thing. In a task list in there, we have a little task list above. The second point I would just make off of what we just talked about is don't let that 15 minutes after the kids go to bed be the only time you guys talk, right? And I know that's not for that you and your wife have more than that, but for new dads, date your spouse. It is so important that you fight for a single night every week. If I could go back and revisit myself at 25 when I got married, I would sit down and say, hey, don't let a week go by where you didn't do something with her that was about quality conversation.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest mistakes I made early on is I spoke to her in my love language instead of coming home and speaking to her in her love language. And that is going to set the tone for your household
Oh, that's so
because
good.
you are often a husband before you're a dad. And so you have to treat your wife great. And then you also have to let the kids see that example. So don't let that be the only 15 minutes you spend together.
Oh, that's so good. For those of you who don't know about love languages, Gary Chapman wrote a book, gosh, at least 20 years ago, but it's called The Five Love Languages, and essentially it's learning how you communicate, how you communicate, and then also how you receive that same communication. So if your love language is physical touch, but your wife's isn't, you need to learn how to communicate with her so she can understand it. And so it's a
That's
great
exactly right.
tool, great book. I highly recommend it for all couples, especially parents, because I'm in that season right now. You know, I have a 10-month-old, but your communication is it's going to dip in this season. You're going to learn a lot about each other because you're going to be stressed out. Your wife is still recovering. Her hormones are all over the place. Yours are probably too. But you need to learn how to communicate and recognize, hey, this is what stressed out wife looks like, or this is how I operate. And so these are just some things that I think as dads you should certainly be aware of, because if you ignore them, it can lead into a pretty big unavoidable circumstance that you don't want to have. So, well, Reese,
Hmm.
do you have anything else to add? I certainly appreciate your time, and I want to honor your time with us today.
No, I don't. I'll put the cherry on top with this thought here. Most of the time, people don't sit down and look in the telescope and see where they're going in life. And so a lot of times, you just said wife's hormones are crazy, your hormones are probably crazy. I remember the zombie stage when I would wake up and had a screaming baby and had a toddler who wouldn't stay in her bed, and I just remember feeling like a zombie. That is only temporary. That's only a
Right.
temporary stage of life. But you have to fight for your wife, you have to fight for your kids. Like that's the time you should be fighting the most to lead the family. And then the important part, look down the road 10 years. This is a great exercise to do with your spouse. When you go on date night, look down the road 10 years and talk about what life looks like in 10 years. Start to develop a 10-year plan together, because the couples that stay together are the ones that grow together as opposed
Amen.
to growing apart. And
Yeah.
that has to do with where you're going in life. And a lot of times we're new dads and we're young and we have all of these dreams and all of these aspirations, and our wife cannot have different dreams and different aspirations. We don't want to grow apart. We want to grow together. So invest that quality time, 15 minutes after the kids go to bed, to make sure your day's okay, and your
Mhm.
date night to make sure your life goes okay.
Oh, Reese, you nailed it. You nailed it. That is something that I'm currently teaching on is you want to be careful not to outgrow your wife, but you want to be together because that's what you're supposed to be like. And if you don't know what
Hmm.
life looks like in 10 years, start asking those questions. Hey, in 10 years, gosh, I just turned 40 over the weekend. Where do I want to be at in 10 years? What are the things that I need to plan now, in my day, in my business, in my habits, in my family, my finances. Finance is a big one, but have those conversations. Don't be afraid to have them. And if you need help, there are so many people out there who are willing to help you. There's so many great tools. So, yeah, thank you so much for your wisdom and for all the nuggets of wisdom that you shared with us today, Reese.
You got it. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, John.
All right. Until tomorrow, or until, well, that's been a habit. Until the next time. Um, Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching today's episode. Be on the lookout for more episodes. I'm bringing in more dads to interview them to really answer that question of, what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now, or how did you overcome that? Because the more we talk about this, the more that we can help each other in this season of being a new dad. So thanks everybody, and have a great night.